Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. How we all doing? Seeing people come in? We're joining good. 27. Thanks, Uzma. Seeing people join. 28, good. Everyone joining right now, we're just going to give it a few minutes. Let some people trail in here, finishing the last meetings and jump in. And we appreciate your guys' time today. So excited to get going here shortly, but we're going to give it a few more minutes. $32, keep going. Right. All right, we'll probably give it another minute and then we'll get going shortly. Thanks, Uzma. All right. Got a couple more people in the waiting room. Let them in. We'll get going. Try and make sure we get you guys out of here right on time. All right, all right. You keep muting me, Uzma. I don't catch it. All right. Okay. All right. What do you think, Uzma? You think we're about ready to get going? You're muted, but I think you're saying it's about time. Okay, cool. All right. Well, there's probably a few still going to trickle in, but in order to make sure we get you guys out of here on time and show you everything I think you guys are here to see, I think we're going to get going here. So just brief intro. We got a couple team members here on the call. Probably just going to introduce myself and then Amrita as she's going to go through the demonstration, walk you guys and really see what you guys came here to see. So again, this is the Why Snaptrude is Your Next Level SketchUp Alternative webinar. We're here to walk you guys through product. Here's some questions you guys might have as you guys go through that product or go through Snaptrude, and then see a little bit of your reactions, and then ultimately see if this is something that fits into your guys' process and give you guys a little bit of understanding of what we're doing and where we're going. So with that, my name is Logan Schaefer. I'm a director here at Snaptrude, director of sales. So work tightly with our marketing team and our product teams. So you'll see some of those folks on this call as well. The agenda of this call is pretty introductory to Snaptrude. We're just showing you guys a little bit about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it. And for some of these points on this agenda, it's essentially, these are things that you guys will see and what we'll cover today. And these are how maybe you're thinking about your process as it pertains to how does Snaptrude fit into our process, right? So that's essentially the first point, introduction to Snaptrude. You know, where do I see this adding value compared to what am I doing today? This, whoop, it was the second one is how are we tackling real design challenges you guys might be facing today, right? There's a slew of different softwares and solutions out there. A lot of them are siloed, they're outdated, some of them are tedious. redesigning, moving things from one software to another, extensive manual efforts. These are challenges we've seen and heard from other firms, other professionals like yourselves that we have been set out to tackle. The third point, as you guys go through, the magic of turning sketches into BIM. So today we've seen that you either have a choice. You either have simple, fast, and user-friendly, or you've got data-driven and super rich information for decision making. And it was our thought is why can't you have both, right? So that's what we're trying to do here with Snaptrude, and we hope you guys can see that. Then the fourth point, exploring collaboration and interoperability with Revit. I think this is one of the larger ones for everyone on the call. How would a much simplified handoff affect your current workflows, right? How are you guys doing that today? What would it look like if you were utilizing Snaptrude for that process? And then what would live collaboration and quick access from anywhere, how would that change the way you guys could possibly work? So that's essentially how we're going to go through this. And at the end, we're going to have a quick 2 or 3 question poll. Super simple. It's a drop down. You can just select an answer. And then as Amritha is walking through this, everyone on this call probably has a different design process and they go through their work differently. So as Amritha is walking you guys through Snaptrude, try and see yourself utilizing Snaptrude, how you would possibly use it, how it fits into your design processes and methods, and how specifically the automation, collaboration, and interoperability could potentially add value to what you're doing today. So feel free to take notes, add questions into the chat throughout the demonstration. At the end of this call, what we'll do is we will go through those questions, answer them live. We'll have Amritha answer them herself or others on the call. And then if we run out of time, we'd love to connect with you guys after the demo and set up a, more personalized, specific walkthrough based on what you guys are looking to achieve. So I know that was a little bit of a lot, but I wanted to set the stage. As you guys walk through with Amritha, try and put yourself into Snaptrude and how you guys would utilize it, all right? Amritha, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and go walk through.
Thanks, Logan. Hi, everyone. I'm Amrita. I lead product at Snaptrude. You met some of you guys.
Everyone can mute themselves, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, that'll be great. So to start off, let me share my screen so you can see what the Snaptrude interface looks like, and then we can take it from there. So you can see that the Snaptrude interface, it's like the first thing that you basically notice when you see the interface is that it's not a downloaded product. It's something that runs on Chrome. So you open it through a web link. So basically, Snaptrude is a web product that you can access on your browser, any browser that you want to. This sort of allows you to access Snaptrude on any device at any point of time, right? As long as you have your account created. The second thing that I'd like to point out is how the interface actually looks. We've sort of tried to make it as simple and easy to learn as possible, in the sense that if you're sort of coming in from SketchUp or Revit, you sort of feel like you're falling into a familiar territory. You have a bunch of your design tools and you have a bunch of library tools, very similar to how SketchUp and Revit sort of operate. Aside from that, one of the big differences between what Snaptrude actually does and how you sort of design in some of your other tools is what we like to call spatial modeling. So you can design on Snaptrude using actual spaces and how you want to sort of define interaction between these spaces. And you can also sort of design in terms of how you would design on Revit itself, which is using BIM elements and things. Right. So what does spatial modeling mean? It pretty much means that anything that you draw on Snaptrude by default is a space. It's a 3-dimensional volume. So if I look at this object in 3D, you can see that it's not just a rectangle that I drew out, it's also extruded. It has a height associated with it. You can, at this point, continue to work within that space. You can split it up into pieces and create more spaces within. Or I'm just going to go back into plan and sort of add more spaces around this. Once I have my spaces, I can actually start moving them around. At this point of time, since you basically have a spatial layout, you can start using this almost as a bubble diagram to actually design the layout of your space. You can also start editing some of these. What that and the edits are quite parametric. What that kind of means is that when you're sort of moving an edge, it's kind of like you're moving a wall. You're extending a room, making it longer or shorter, and you're making the neighboring room longer and shorter as well. And you'll notice that as I keep moving this around, you can see the area of the space itself. So you sort of get feedback on, what is the impact of each and every change that you're doing. Is a certain space getting extended by a certain square meter, or what kind of impact does your edit have? In terms of how you would actually model in 3D as well, you have the simple push-pull modeling capabilities, which is basically you can use the push-pull tool and sort of modify the height of different spaces. But we also have something that we call spatial primitives, which is a bunch of properties which are predefined for different spatial types. So, for example, if you wanted to create, say, a water body, what you would do is pretty much type it in. Or if you wanted to create a deck, you type it in, and you'll see that the space sort of changes its height immediately on the basis of that. And maybe another example is a terrace, right? There's also like a color associated with it. I don't know why it's lagging, but as you can see, just on the basis of what I've labeled, the space primitive has sort of changed according to that. This allows you to sort of play around with massing and try out different massing forms pretty much really quick. This real quick. And we have a bare bones office building laid out over here. What I mean by that is that you have some office spaces, some cafe spaces, some lobby, lifts, and so on, right? And at this point, it's like a very simple massing model or a spatial model. The great thing about the ways the spatial model is laid out is that every object is pretty much a component. So if you start editing any object which has copies, all the copies sort of get edited as well, right? And this starts getting more and more powerful when you start working with multi-story buildings. So I'm just gonna select everything that we have over here and create 10 stories to create a 10-story building real quick. And at this point, I can keep editing this either in 3D, or you can see over here on the side, a bunch of stories have been created. So you can actually go back into 2D and start editing in 2D as well. And any change that I make on any single floor sort of keeps getting reflected on all of the other floors because I've sort of created them as copies. At any point of time, if I want to sort of make any floor unique, for example, your ground floor happens to be a lobby, you can select it and you can make it unique and edit it independently. Say I want to make some changes to the facade. So I'm just going to select some of these alternate floors here, and I'm going to flip them along the x-axis. Maybe I want these to be terraces. I'm going to do a little bit of push-pull to sort of change what the facade looks like. Maybe I want to create an angled edge. You can see how the parametric modules sort of become really, really powerful as you sort of keep editing and exploring forms. Right. At this point, let's say I'm happy with my massing model and I'm ready to go into the BIM stage. I want to start detailing out the building further. We have an automation tool, which we call Create Building, which essentially creates walls and slabs and so on from this massing model. You can set a bunch of presets. You can pick the kind of walls that you want. So let's say I want my external walls to be glass curtain walls. You can pretty much set similar properties for your internal walls, for your slabs and ceilings and so on, parapet walls and such as well. And once you're happy with the properties, you can click Create Building. And this takes about 30 seconds. And what it does is that it uses the massing model as the center line, and it's pretty much offsets on both sides to create the walls. It calculates where the slabs need to be, and it creates slabs of certain thickness and sort of creates walls of a specific height as per the thickness. And as you can see, the BIM model with walls is pretty much ready at this point. If you go back into plan, you'll see that the BIM model is created with like really clean wall junctions. So every junction is sort of accounted for. It says that the external walls sort of get priorities so that the internal walls are set within it. The BIM model at this point does not necessarily need to be final. It's not that you just can set all the walls in one place. You can change it once it's been created as well. So if I wanted to select all of these walls and just change the type, I can just select it and maybe change it to concrete wall because it's the wall of a lift or something like that. I can do this as well. While I'm designing, if I want to sort of keep track of my metrics a little bit more realistically, there's a bunch of metrics that you can keep track of within Snaptrude itself. And one of the most powerful ones is the area statements, which are completely automated, right? And here you have a couple of different ways of doing it. You can either visualize it using graphs, or you can see it a little bit more in detail over here. The graphical representation sort of quickly allows you to see what the area breakup is across different floors. And just based on how you've labeled each of your spaces, you can see that you have certain amount of office area, certain amount of lobby, terrace, cafeteria, and so on across different floors. And you can see it in detail here as well. So you can actually see what is the internal and external area of each floor looking like, and what is the internal area of pretty much of any space looking like. That's the first data point. The second data point that's automated is the BOQ. And this is an automatic quantity takeoff pretty much. I've not done anything to set it up. It just calculates the quantities on its own, right? So it pretty much tells you the quantity of concrete, glass, brick, whatever is there within this model. And this sort of keeps updating in real time as well. So if I sort of want to explore a different material and see what that looks like, that would update my BOQ as well. Maybe I want to change something in the facade. If you go into the BOQ, that'll immediately show you these changes as well and tell you that, hey, there's a new type of glass that you've added, and that's the square meter value for this type of glass. This becomes really powerful when you sort of start tying it back to your costing engine or pretty much any other kind of data that you want to. You could export it out and connect it with embodied carbon or whatever your priorities are. And it starts becoming extremely powerful from that perspective. Now, the BIM model at this stage is powerful in the sense that you can start doing more BIM edits on top of it. Some of the most important things at this stage is pretty much adding doors, adding windows, adding staircases, designing a little bit more in detail, adding more detail elements to your design, right? We have a bunch of presets for our libraries as well, for doors, windows, furniture, and so on. But aside from that, you can sort of upload all of your library objects as well, whether you come from SketchUp or Revit. We sort of support library elements, and you can work collaboratively with your team and have like a centralized repository for your library. So I'll show you that in a minute. Placing doors in Snaptrude is as easy as just like click and place. If you sort of wanted to do this in 2D, you could do that as well. And in 2D, it's a little bit more powerful in the sense that you can actually pick orientation of the door while you're placing. Choose which side you want the door to swing to. If you want to change any property, that's super easy as well. You can simply select the door and let's say you want this to be 1200 wide instead of 800. You can do that, and a new sort of door type is created. Don't have to worry about like actually creating a new type. It works the same way with Windows as well. We have a bunch of actually default windows, and you can sort of upload your own window families as well. Staircases are quite interesting because these are parametric elements with a lot more control than even doors and windows. What I mean by that is that even though we have a bunch of primitives that you can simply drag and drop, you can control this a lot more. So let me just select. If I select this staircase, you can see a bunch of properties over here, starting from the number of steps, to is it tied to the story or not, what is the tread riser, so on and so forth, the width, so on and so forth. So if I wanted to customize anything, let's say I wanted to make it 1500 wide, I just type it in and it immediately updates the entire staircase accordingly. If I wanted to reduce the number of steps as well, I would just put that number here. Let's say I want 17 steps, and it calculates a riser accordingly. If I wanted to actually put in a riser value and like I want it to be 160, it'll sort of do a back calculation and tell you how many steps. So the parametric staircases are quite powerful. You can also disconnect it from the story if you sort of wanted to create something that just goes up into the mezzanine level or something like that. And at this point, you can sort of control the height and say, I just want it to be 1500 tall. You can do this too. So it starts becoming really, really powerful and really quickly on the basis of very simple staircase primitives. Um, in terms of the data points that I was talking about, at this point of time in the design, if you wanted to add more information more from the sustainability perspective, or if you wanted to study neighborhood and terrain and things like that, you can start doing that as well. Pretty much by going to the import tab and loading in your site location. You can do this in a couple of ways. If you have the latitude, longitude of your site, you can type that in, or you can just search for the address. You can search by just putting in the address as well. In this particular case, I'm just gonna go to this location and turn on elevations and building, then click on load topography. And it takes a couple of seconds. Um, but as soon as the topography is in, you'll see that because I've turned on the elevations, it sort of gives you an idea of what the slope around the site then looks like. You can see that there's a hill up there. You can see that there's a water body. This sort of helps just contextualize your design a lot better. But aside from that, you can actually set the orientation and like site locations a little bit more accurately as well. So if I wanted to change the orientation and say, hey, my north is actually this way and I want my building to be oriented along this direction, I can very easily do that by actually just rotating the topography. And at this point of time, if I sort of start running a sun path analysis or a shadow analysis, that would sort of it'll take into account the fact that the terrain has been rotated and the north has been rotated as well. So the sun path is something that is quite useful, especially when you're trying to do early kind of sustainability inputs. If when you want to start putting that in into your design, it helps you like really quickly understand where you want your facade to be, where you want your shading elements to be, and things like that. Similarly, if you wanted to do shadow studies, you'd be able to do that as well. You can pick the date and time, date, month, and time that you want to study, and you can run the analysis accordingly. The next thing that I want to show you guys is how collaboration works inside of Snaptrude. And to do that, I'm quickly going to just invite Logan into this model. There's a couple of different ways in which you could collaborate. One is pretty much just inviting somebody into the model and working with them collaboratively. When you invite somebody into the model, it pretty much works very similar to how you would do it on Google Docs. You can invite people with different kinds of permission levels. You can invite them either as editors or viewers. So for example, if you wanted to invite your client and you don't want them to have any kind of editing capabilities, but you just want them to have viewing and commenting capabilities, you would invite them as viewers. Or if you wanted to invite somebody else from your team or a different stakeholder who needs edit access, you'd invite them as editors. The second way of collaborating is actually in creating a team and inviting all of your team members. What that kind of allows you to do is have one place where all of your team members are invited and all the models which are created within the team are by default shared across the team. So you don't have to keep inviting people again and again. And that's pretty much what you see over here. That's a team that's created with a bunch of people already invited. And you can see that Logan's joined the project. As soon as he came in, I got a notification saying that he came in. If you wanted to start working together, there's a couple of different ways. You could work together asynchronously, but you can also start working synchronously, right? The brainstorm mode is what we like to call the brainstorm mode is an incredibly powerful way to work together synchronously. The minute I click brainstorm mode, Logan clicks brainstorm mode as well. We'd sort of be able to see what the other person is doing, and we can start having discussions live on the project itself. And I'd sort of also be able to take him through the model and point out specific things and be like, hey, like, what do you think about this area? and he'll also be able to point at things as well. You can see his cursor now visible on the screen. As I orbit around the model and I change the views, it sort of changes in his screen as well. And let's say I wanted to drop in a comment here and say, let's change the glass material. It'll show up within the comment history tab over here. And actually I can tag Logan and be like, hey, can you do this? Right. So you can actually tag your teammates and sort of assign tasks to them if you want to, or if you're having a discussion, you could pretty much just tell them that you want them to make a certain change. If I wanted to add another comment here on the facade, let's modify. The comments that you add are very contextual to the views that you added to. So if you go back to this comment, you'll see that it actually sets the view correctly. So that when Logan's looking at this, he'll know exactly which glass I want him to change. And if I tagged a different teammate over here, they'd know that, okay, when I'm talking about the facade, I'm talking about this elevation, I'm talking about this particular area or something like that. This sort of allows you to be more collaborative in the way that you design, and you sort of eliminate the possibility of errors and things like that. When your teammate is done with whatever changes they wanted to, they can literally reply and say that they've made the change. And as you can see, that Logan's actually changed the material and he's changing it in real time. You can see the material changing in front of our eyes, right? The collaboration capabilities, the real-time collaboration capabilities are really, really powerful. The more you sort of start using it and sort of leveraging it in your design workflows, you'll realize sort of the time benefit that you have over, collaborating asynchronous versus collaborating synchronous. Now, this project is not super detailed. It's still kind of bare bones and minimal. But I wanted to show you guys what a more detailed and more completed model would look like. If you were designing on Snaptrude, we sort of built this in like maybe 15-20 minutes. You could go from a model which looked like that to a model which looks a little bit more detailed like this, and probably another 15-20 minutes. And let me probably go into a floor plan so you can see that it's a lot further detailed as well. You can see that the internal layout is kind of detailed as well, along with furniture and internal walls and so on. You can also start sort of annotating. So if, for example, if you wanted to create a detailed drawing which specifies what the dimensions of different rooms are and so on, you can do that. For example, I'm just going to put in the width and the length of this room. And when you're having your discussions, you sort of have data points in place when you're designing. The other thing that I wanted to show you guys in a detailed model is what the BOQ looks like. So over here, you'd see, depending on the kind of objects that you have walls and slabs and so on, but you also have furniture and doors, windows, facade elements, and all of that. You can see that your doors are basically quantified as well on the basis of the types of doors that you place, and your furniture is sort of quantified as well, the type of furniture that you've placed. So when you want to sort of take this data out and sort of look at it in a different way, you can actually just export it out into an Excel format, into a CSV format, and take it into Excel or something like this and look at the data a little bit more in detail. What I was saying a little bit earlier about the Snaptrude library being really powerful is that every team sort of gets a centralized asset management repository almost. So pretty much all of the models that you want to use, all of the 3D models that you want to use, either as doors or windows or as furniture, or even like the materials that you use, all the assets that you typically use in your projects, you can upload them into one location and all of your teammates would sort of be able to access it. This starts getting more and more powerful in the sense that you can add a lot more custom data onto the library. So for example, for furniture, if you want to add in the furniture cost, or you want to add vendor information or anything else, right? So for material, maybe you wanted to add something like the U value. or any kind of information that you would want to add transparency. You could sort of customize this extensively as well. So you can sort of choose the kind of property you want to add and add it in here. If you have already a bunch of information, say you have a vendor catalog and you have that catalog in a CSV format, you can actually upload that in here so that all of your data sort of gets pre-populated and input without having to like manually enter everything in yourself. And probably the last thing that I want to show you guys is how Snaptrude interoperates with Revit. So there's a couple of different things that you could do. One is actually export a completed model into Revit. And the second is that you can actually import a model from Revit into Snaptrude and then sort of modify that within Snaptrude and then export that back into Revit, sort of continue documentation and further stages of your design process. So I have like a relatively simple model over here on Revit, and this is completely created within Revit itself. If I go into a floor plan, you'll see that there's a core, there's a staircase, there's a bunch of different walls. Then there's a little bit of an interesting. So if I wanted to sort of import this model into Snaptrude, what I would do is start off, you'd have to install the Snaptrude Manager add-in. The entire import and export process is managed through the Snaptrude Manager. Once you sort of download and install it, you'd be able to authenticate it with your account. So the same credentials that you use to activate your Snaptrude account would be used to activate this as well. Once authenticated, you can see that it's authenticated with my account. You can actually just upload this model into Snaptrude. It takes a couple of minutes depending on how heavy the model is. And while the script is running, I'm gonna take a pause and maybe it's a good time to look at a few of the questions. Logan, what do you think?
Yeah, we can certainly get to some of the questions. Let's see. While we're letting this upload real quick, let's go back. Efficiency is a metric that was answered. Why, when you place a door, it doesn't place it on every level? Can floors be created typical and repeat as components?
Absolutely. So actually, when you place a door, you're absolutely right. It doesn't replicate on every level, but you can sort of create copies in the BIM stage as well. What I mean by that is, so let's say I wanted to place a door here, here, and here, and I wanted to select this floor and copy it above. At this point, you'll see that all the copies that I create above have the same doors in place. So it's kind of like you have to sort of pre-decide some of these things. Doors and windows are pretty much one of those things that you have to pre-decide before you copy to sort of have it replicated on all the stories.
Awesome. And then is the topography tool only for North America or is it worldwide?
Perfect. The topography tool is worldwide. You can find data of any city globally. That said, I would say that the accuracy is higher in North America and Europe in terms of the buildings that are imported. I don't think a lot of sites in other countries have the building data very accurate. So it kind of depends on the specific geography that you're looking for. That said, you'd still be able to modify some of these things. So for example, if you wanted to modify this building, if you know that this is actually that much taller, you can just push pull it and modify it. Or if you wanted to sort of reduce or increase the extent of the building a little, you can do that as well. So you can modify it. I think the accuracy is best in North America and Europe.
Awesome. And then how do you manage design exploration with copies and design options? I know that this is a highly requested question.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, design options are very similar to how you would do it on SketchUp. We've not actually built in anything separately or differently. So at any stage of your design process, if you wanted to sort of save a copy or save a different version, you could save as the model. So you can go in here and say save as and save a different version. Some of our users also sort of like to have different options within the same canvas, especially if it's like a small area that they're detailing out. It's like within maybe a small amphitheater or something like that. So you can pretty much do that as well. We don't have Revit style design options, something like that yet. But yeah, like Logan said, this is one of the most popularly requested capabilities.
Awesome. And another easy one too. Does every building start from scratch, or can you use templates, historical projects to get started? How does that work?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So you can see that within every team, you have projects, libraries, and templates. So this is pretty much any project that you want to sort of pre-create and use. I think this team probably has a couple of good ones. Any kind of data that you want to pre-build and save so that you can reuse it, you can absolutely do that. So if you have a bunch of unit plans, for example, that you keep reusing across different projects as a starting point, you can have like 2-bedroom apartments, villas, or whatever kind of templates that you would want to create. You can create that and save it. And you can either simply click, if you click on it, it'll create a new project using the template, or you can just go into the template and copy from the template into a project as well.
Awesome. And I think Britton and Altaf have been answering a few here in chat directly. So I'm trying to see if there's any unanswered so far. Um, I think that's it right now. That's open that I can see.
Awesome.
It if there's any more, feel free to throw them in there right now. And it looks like that upload's done anyway. So
Yeah, it's great timing. So as soon as the upload is done, it sort of allows me to decide where I want to upload it to. And as you can see, I have my personal workspace and I have a couple of teams created. So I'm just gonna go ahead and upload it into my personal workspace. Sort of allows me to pick what folder I want to upload into as well. And it'll now start uploading the model into Snaptrude. The first thing that you'll see when a Revit model uploads into Snaptrude is that you sort of have to map the levels on Revit into the stories on Snaptrude. And typically, if you don't have very complex levels, if your levels are literally floor to floor, you can just say continue. It'll give you all the right data. Where it starts getting a little tricky is when you have mezzanines and things like that. Then you might have to like go through this list and just decide which levels you want to ignore. So I'm gonna hit continue over here because it's a fairly straightforward model. And again, it'll take a couple of seconds to actually import and save it. And you can see the notification here, which basically tells you that it's still importing. Just wait like maybe 15-20 seconds, and it should be done. There we go. Here's the imported model. When you sort of start looking at this model a little bit more in detail, you'll start seeing the fidelity of the input as well. What I mean by that is that you can look at it in 3D as well. You can see that pretty much most of the data that was in that model has been recreated over here. But also if I go into say the floor plan, let's go into maybe level 5 or level 4. You can see a little bit more of how accurately the data was recreated. So if I click on the wall, you can see that the wall was created the same way as it was on Revit with the same kind of structure and finishes, all of the different wall types. And you can see that there are cutouts in the slab here as well, exactly the same as it was created on Revit. You'll see that the curtain walls are created with a bunch of mullions and panels and so on. And you can see that the staircase has been sort of created here as well. At this point, if you sort of want to continue designing within this, you can continue with either spatial modeling or you can actually start designing with walls. You can choose any of the types of walls that you want to, and it's as simple as just drawing there. You just click, and press enter, and it gets drawn. You can also start drawing different kinds of elements depending on the kind of detail that you want to create. So if I wanted to create some kind of a false ceiling over here, I can do that as well. And you can do that using a combination of lines and arcs depending on what your design actually looks like. Once you're sort of happy with the design, when you sort of want to take this back into Revit, the export process into Revit looks quite similar to the import as well. you simply go here, click on Export Model and Drawing, and in the drop-down, you'll see a bunch of different options. Some of these sort of help you go into maybe rendering engines like Lumion or Twinmotion. The one that we are looking for right now is a Revit export file .trude. This is what basically gets reconciled or remapped back into Revit. Once this is exported, it takes like maybe a couple of seconds. You can go back into Revit and you can use the Snaptrude Manager again and use this button over here now called Reconcile to Revit. So pretty much you can just click on that, and if I can navigate correctly, you can simply select the Trude file that you've exported, and you'll see that the model sort of gets recreated correctly on the basis of whatever you've drawn inside of Snaptrude. You can see the false ceiling, and you can see a couple of walls created as well. This is actually, it's quite powerful depending on the level of detail at which you modeled it inside of Snaptrude. So if you added doors and windows, that gets recreated as well. If you've applied materials within Snaptrude, that gets recreated as well. I have a couple of sample Revit exports to show you guys. Probably this is a good one because it has a bunch of sloping roofs and custom design elements like pergolas and railings and things like that. The fidelity of the Revit export at this point is 100%. All of your elements sort of get recreated, but not 100% of them get recreated parametrically. That is the caveat. The strength is that most of the objects that are recreatable on Revit, which is the walls and the slabs, doors, windows, floors, beams, columns, all of these objects sort of get recreated. The ones that are a little bit tricky are things like pergolas, railings, and sloping roofs. So these are not 100% parametric. The ones that are parametric, you actually get RFAs for all of your doors and windows. So the Revit export is sort of more powerful than using something like an IFC export, right? So at this point, if I sort of wanted to move my window along inside of Revit, you can do that as well. All the family information is like really well preserved as well. What I mean by that is if you go into the slab and look at the way that the slab has been constructed, you'll see all the layers are exactly the same as the layers that were built within Snaptrude too. So all of the layers that you sort of create for an object in Snaptrude sort of get translated into Revit. The same thing applies to walls as well. So all of the native families are supported quite well parametrically. I think this is a good time for me to pause and probably take some questions.
Awesome. So there was a good bit shown there here with the Revit interop. I think that might spur some questions. Just trying to see what we are following up on. One of the questions that we didn't get to, how do you manage design? Oh no, that one we did. What's the next one? It was around, I guess, a lot of good questions. A lot of them have been answered. If you had a question that wasn't answered, feel free to come off mute and speak up and ask that question directly to Amritha. Try, if 2 or 3 come off at once, please try and be courteous. But feel free to come off mute and ask directly if you'd like. Or you can always throw it in the chat and we can catch it there.
I saw a question that I just sort of wanted to pull out, which is about auto-creating spaces based on spreadsheet
Oh,
programs.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that one. Yep.
That's actually a great request. We don't have that at the moment, but this is something that's actually coming up very soon. It's on our roadmap, and probably you guys can look forward to the next version that we release. It's gonna have some of these capabilities. We're constantly developing the product, and we're constantly bringing out new updates. So I sort of love hearing some of these suggestions as well.
Is there a public roadmap that you have published somewhere by chance? Because a lot of things I question and talk about here is thinking about where this is going to and trying to compare it to other products we're looking into and then exploring at the same time. So I don't know if you have a public roadmap or if you plan on publishing one. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes complete sense. We're actually trying to put something together uh, exactly to do what you're talking about. I don't think we have something like very nicely done right now, but we have.
Yeah, we don't have a public facing roadmap currently. We want to make sure that we've got all our T's crossed and I's dotted before we deliver to you guys with that. That being said, booking a call directly with us, we can certainly divulge a little bit more information on what we can do, or where we're headed. It's not really the forum here, but we can certainly set up a call and do that shortly at a later date. So but that is on our roadmap. We are looking to get a public-facing roadmap out to the masses once we, go through some QA/QC on that. Here's a question: can you connect to other databases via API, such as Cost and Carbon?
Mhm. We actually have a few users who are using Power BI to sort of look at the BOQ data and the change log data from within Snaptrude, and they're sort of creating their own graphs and stuff using Power BI. So this is something that you can do. They're not doing it using the API. They're actually taking the CSV export of the change logs and of the BOQs, and they're sort of building their graphs and stuff on top of that. We are thinking about enabling this through API too as well.
Awesome. A couple more questions. They're starting to pile in. This is great. When exporting to Revit or from Revit, does it export Revit linked models? Can we mix link to
Mm.
Snaptrude models yet?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. When you're bringing in from Revit, you can bring in with all of your linked models, and it'll show up inside of Snaptrude as linked models as well. So especially if you're sort of working on interiors and you have maybe a structural model and an MEP model or something like that that you just want to bring in as reference, you can absolutely bring it in. If it's already pre-linked in the Revit file, it'll come in. And inside of Snaptrude, you can just sort of select it, you can filter it, and you can hide it when you want to, or you can lock it in place as well, so that you don't sort of modify it by default.
Awesome. And then do we have an inbuilt rendering engine in Snaptrude, or can we use V-Ray, Enscape, Lumion? How would that work?
Yeah. You can sort of do a little bit of both, is how I'd answer that. We have our own inbuilt rendering, pseudo rendering almost. I wouldn't really call it a realistic render. It's kind of like a visualization tool, and I can show you what that looks like real quick. What a lot of our users do actually is they use the inbuilt render more to collaborate with their clients to like quickly show their clients what the design update pretty much looks like, because they don't want to share the model the way it looks. They want to share a slightly more finessed version. And because they can share it to their client through a link and sort of collaborate with their client on top of the render, it makes the feedback loop a lot tighter. And I'll quickly show you guys what that looks like as well. But aside from that, you can absolutely export to, say, a Lumion or a Twinmotion or a render tool of your choice. You can export either an OBJ or an FBX, and you can sort of take that into your rendering engine, and that would sort of give you a really good high fidelity render for your presentations and things like that.
Awesome. I'm seeing Altaf and Britton are taking care of some of the other questions as this is going through. I think they've been answered. Oh, would love to see the energy analysis in action as well. How does it compare to Insight? Can you talk about what we're doing in energy analysis, where we're going there? That's essentially the question from Andrew.
Mm. We don't have built-in energy modeling capabilities, actually, to answer your question. We're sort of looking at integrating a third party to sort of get energy analysis within Snaptrude. At this point of time, we don't have anything in built. Yeah. So this is kind of what the render looks like. It's not really a render. It's a little better visualization tool than what you have within the Snaptrude modeling environment. But again, as you can see, it sort of got done almost instantaneously. So it's like really, really quick and easy to get this in place. And you can sort of share the render exclusively with your client, and then your client can sort of navigate around it. It's a 3D render that they can walk through. It's not just like a static image. And you can collaborate with them over the render as well. So you can do exactly whatever you do in your model while you're collaborating. You can drop in comments. The client can drop in comments as well. And what a lot of our users do is that they sort of use the render as a way to sort of separate out external feedback that comes in from client and client's teams with any kind of internal feedback and conversations that are made with respect to the actual design, which stays within the model. And you can absolutely start saving views here and sort of export any views that you want to from here as well.
Awesome. Oh, I think we got one more. Another important thing, I think. Is there a question in here? Drawing curves in 3D or 2D easier and more fun. Does the program recognize that a designer is drawing a curve and makes drawing curves in 3D or 2D easier and more fun? I think is the question. There's some added context to the beginning of that.
I think I probably didn't show how curves work on Snaptrude, so I'll just go in here and show you guys real quick. The curves in Snaptrude are, at this point of time, they're still 2D curves. They're not really 3D curves. Just to show you guys how it works, you can sort of switch between drawing linear and curved objects at the same time. So you can literally switch between it with the keyboard shortcut. So if you type A, you start drawing an arc. If you type L, you start drawing something which is more linear. Right? And within each space that you're drawing or wall that you're drawing, you can sort of keep switching between the two. There's a bunch of things that we think would make this experience quite intuitive and powerful. We have a bunch of snaps that you have in other tools as well, like a tangent snap sort of helps you draw more accurately. But aside from that, we also have a couple of other things like concentric snaps and normal snaps. What I mean by that is, so let's say that this is one space and I wanted to create another space around it. I'm gonna start drawing here. You'll sort of see this blue or sign indicator. And if I just double click here, it sort of draws a second arc, which is exactly concentric to the first one. And I can do this anywhere else in the model as well. If I wanted to draw something over here, just depending on where I move my mouse, I can just see the sign indicators. So you sort of know what you're sort of drawing concentric to. You can double click or you can just snap to it. And whenever you're happy, you can close the space. And you'll start seeing whatever you've drawn again in 2D, you'll be able to see it in 3D. And at this point, all your push-pull modeling and other similar capabilities are active for the space as well. The same capabilities are extended to drawing walls, drawing slabs, all the different object types.
Awesome. And then I think a comment, drawing curves in 3D using planes would be cool. Agreed. So I think we've got about 5 minutes left. Certainly open to more Q&A. We do want to make sure that we get one of those, just a quick little poll with 2 questions in, just to make sure that we're driving in the right direction as we continue building this out. But we'd love to connect with you guys individually. And the final slide you guys will see will have my direct contact information where you can reach out and we can set up time to walk through things in more detail and a more personal standpoint when it comes to your process and what you guys are looking to use it for. We'd love to continue exploring that and work with you guys to see what you're doing. So with that, Uzma, looks like she threw the poll in there. Please, if you can, just fill out those quick 2 questions for us. And then if you've got another minute or 2, let us know if you've got one more question or 2. We'd be happy to take it. And otherwise, we'll throw up the wrap-up slide that will give you my contact information. And we would love to connect with you further on this. Give it a couple minutes. I like it. Getting some good responses. Appreciate it. While you guys are doing that, I want to give Amritha thank you so much for all of your efforts and walkthroughs today. We certainly appreciate it. I know everyone, if not the majority, if not everyone on the call, appreciates it too. Hopefully, we can connect with the majority of them and continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. It was fantastic seeing so many people here on the call.
All right. Uzma, you want to pop up the wrap-up slide so the contact information is there should someone want to jot that down? Awesome. Give it one more minute and then we'll get out of here. I don't see any more questions, and hopefully we answered all the questions in the chat and those that were voiced out loud. And if not, you know where to reach us. Alrighty, appreciate it. We will see you guys shortly, hopefully, and thank you guys for your time again. We'll talk soon. Bye.